Wesley Rainer didn't plan to stop. His driver had already rolled past the first few stalls, but something about the splash of wildflowers tucked between stacks of tomatoes and jars of honey caught his eye. "Pull over," he said suddenly, removing his sunglasses. "Sir," Malcolm glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "I said pull over." Wesley was already loosening his tie. It was Saturday morning, and he was supposed to be halfway to the Hamptons for a board meeting he didn't want to attend but couldn't avoid. Still, something about the flower stall had stopped him cold. It wasn't just the flowers, it was her. She stood behind the stand in a faded blue sundress, her auburn hair twisted up in a messy knot, a streak of dirt on her cheek as she bent to rearrange a bucket of sunflowers. She wasn't trying to sell anything. She wasn't smiling for customers. She was just there. Real. Effortless, he stepped out of the black car, ignoring the curious glances from the older couple buying cucumbers at the next stall and the boy handing out apple samples nearby. His polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he approached her. She didn't look up. "Are these local?" he asked, nodding to the bouquet of wildflowers in a mason jar. She glanced up then, her green eyes meeting his with a flicker of surprise, maybe even suspicion. "Nope," she said, picking a leaf off a stem. "Got them shipped in from Paris this morning." His brow lifted, she smirked. "Of course they're local, I grow them myself, right out behind my house in Oak Ridge." Wesley felt something twist in his chest. He hadn't expected her to be funny. "Or beautiful, or sarcastic. You always talk to customers like that. You always show up in a suit and tie to buy flowers at a farmer's market." Fair point. He reached into his jacket pocket, but before he could pull out his wallet, she held up a hand. "Don't even think about it." "You're about to pull out some shiny platinum card, aren't you?" He hesitated. "What's wrong with that? This isn't one of those overpriced city shops, cash only, and I don't charge hedge fund prices." He couldn't remember the last time anyone had talked to him like that. Wesley Rainer, CEO of Rainer Tech, billionaire by 32 and currently the most sought-after name in Manhattan's business gossip columns, was rarely challenged, never dismissed. But she didn't care. "I don't have cash," he admitted. She shrugged. "Then you'll have to come back next Saturday." He grinned, the first real grin he'd felt in weeks. "Do you always turn away customers? Only the ones wearing Italian leather shoes and looking like they haven't touched dirt in 15 years. He looked down at his shoes. Fair enough. "I'm Wesley," he said, extending a hand. "Wesley Rainer." She didn't take it. Instead, she wiped her hands on a towel and leaned back against the table. "Tessa Oakley." "Tessa." He tried the name out. It suited her. She eyed him. "Wait, Rainer, as in Rainer Tech, Rainer Towers." "Rainer everything?" He nodded. She folded her arms. "What's a billionaire doing at a farmer's market?" He tilted his head. "You Googled me fast. Didn't have to. My brother installs solar panels. You bought out his company last year." Wesley blinked. "Oakley Energy?" "Yup." He remembered the deal. It had been clean, profitable, nothing shady. But still, the way she looked at him made him feel like he needed to apologize. "I didn't shut it down," he said. "We kept the jobs. Your brother still works there, doesn't he?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and picked up a bouquet of orange tulips, bluebells, and tiny white daisies and held it out to him. "Here." He reached for his wallet again. "Put that away," she said. "Consider it a welcome to real-life gift." He took the flowers, stunned. "Thank you." She gave him a half smile. "You'll owe me next week." As he walked back to his car, bouquet in hand, he heard her call after him, "And maybe lose the tie next time." Inside the car, Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Flowers, sir?" Wesley didn't answer. He just stared at the petals in his lap, still smiling. By the following Saturday, Wesley had canceled 3 meetings and rearranged his entire schedule just to make it back to the market. This time he brought cash. "Look who's back," Tessa called when she saw him walking up. Her smile was brighter than the sunflowers lined up in buckets at her side. He stepped closer, a little breathless. "Didn't want to wait another week to pay my debt." She leaned over the table, her arms crossed. "You've got 2 options. 1, you help me carry crates from the truck and earn your flowers. Or 2, you hand over that cash and admit you've never lifted anything heavier than a cappuccino." He slipped off his blazer. "Show me the crates." She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Let's go." 3 crates of mason jars, 2 buckets of zinnias, and 1 splinter later, Wesley stood beside her, his white shirt rolled to the elbows, a streak of dirt on his jaw and sweat trickling down his back. "You look human," she teased. He gave her a look. "You're enjoying this way too much." They worked side by side, arranging flowers, greeting customers, dodging bees. He found himself laughing more than he had in months. She was bright, unfiltered, and full of life. Everything his world wasn't. "Why flowers?" he asked as they took a break on the back of her pickup truck, sipping lemonade. Tessa shrugged. "My mom loved them. She used to say flowers don't care if you're rich or poor, they bloom just the same." He studied her. "You could be doing anything." "Why a flower stand?" "I like the quiet. I like watching things grow." He nodded slowly, the words settling deep inside him. After a pause, she looked at him. "Why did you really stop last week?" He hesitated. "Because I looked out the window and saw something I didn't realize I needed." She didn't say anything, but her smile softened. That night, when he climbed into the back of his car again, he held another bouquet in his lap, this one hand picked by her. There was a note tucked inside. "You still owe me next Saturday." He read it 3 times. For the first time in years, Wesley Rainer couldn't wait for the weekend. Wesley stood outside Tessa's flower stall, watching her braid a length of twine around a bouquet of delphiniums and snapdragons without looking up. There was a small scrape on the back of her hand and dirt under her nails, and yet she moved with the confidence of someone who knew she belonged exactly where she was. "You're late," she said, tying the final knot. "I almost sold your favorite tulips to a tourist in a Yankees hat." "I had a board meeting," he replied, setting a brown paper bag on the edge of her table. "But I brought peace offerings." She opened the bag, pulling out a warm loaf of cinnamon bread. "You bribing me now?" "Depends," he said, folding his arms. "Is it working?" She tore off a piece and chewed slowly. "Ask me after I finish it." He leaned against the table, scanning the nearby stalls. "Busy today?" "It's the first weekend of the month. Locals bring their kids, and the city people wander in pretending to be rustic." He laughed. "I think I saw a woman buying radishes like they were diamonds. She probably thinks they're decorative." Tessa wiped her hands on an apron that had definitely seen better days. "We ran out of dahlias by 9. I had to talk a man out of planting them in his office." "You're good at that," Wesley said, "talking people into or out of things." Her gaze flicked to him. "You say that like it's unusual?" "In my world. No one says no unless they're negotiating." Tessa didn't respond right away. Instead, she lifted a watering can and began dampening the stems in one of the buckets. "So I'm an anomaly." "Congratulations, you found someone who doesn't worship your job title." "I didn't say that's why I come here." She set down the can and crossed her arms. "Then why do you?" "Because you don't care who I am, and because being here feels like—" He paused, searching. "It feels like I can shut everything else out." Tessa tilted her head. "You could do that anywhere." "No," he said, voice quiet. "I couldn't." They stood in the lull of mid-morning chatter, surrounded by the scent of basil and fresh bread, the sound of children laughing near the honey stand. Tessa's eyes lingered on him longer than usual. "You ever stay past noon?" he asked. She blinked. "I have a lot to pack up. I could help. You'd hate it." "Try me." She hesitated, then nodded toward the back of her truck. "You can start by stacking the empty crates. And don't crush the cosmos." 2 hours later, Wesley had learned how to tie down a tarp using only bungee cords and how not to stack wooden boxes unless he wanted them to collapse in the parking lot. He peeled off his jacket and rolled his shirt sleeves again, then helped her fold her tablecloths, which smelled faintly of rosemary. As they loaded the final bundle into the truck bed, he paused. "Come to dinner with me." Tessa closed the tailgate. "I don't own anything that belongs in your kind of restaurant." "I wasn't thinking of my kind, I was thinking of yours." Her brow lifted slightly. "There's a place in River Hollow. They serve fried zucchini on paper plates and play Billie Holiday through a jukebox. I called ahead." She blinked. "You planned this?" I hoped. The corner of her mouth tugged, but she didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the cab of her truck and pulled out a denim jacket. "You drive," she said. "I don't let just anyone behind the wheel of my rust bucket." He grinned and held out his hand. Deal. The truck sputtered twice before starting, and the passenger seat belt had to be coaxed into place, but Wesley didn't complain. He drove slowly, careful not to jolt the dashboard bobblehead of a flamingo wearing a crown. You know, Tessa said, glancing at him, most guys in your position would have sent a car and had a reservation at some rooftop lounge in Tribeca. I've had enough of rooftop lounges. You're full of surprises. I'm just getting started. The restaurant was tucked between a bait shop and a second-hand bookstore. They sat at a table near the window, their meals served in mismatched dishes. Tessa ordered the fried catfish, and Wesley took whatever the chef recommended without looking at the menu. So, she said, dipping a fry in vinegar, do people usually listen when you ask for something? They do. And what happens when they don't? I either walk away or buy the company. She let out a short laugh. Charming. I didn't say it was admirable. He watched her swirl her straw in her lemonade, her expression unreadable. What do you want from me, Wesley? The question wasn't flirtatious. It was careful, serious. He set down his fork. I don't know yet. But I know I don't want to stop showing up on Saturdays, and I know that when I'm not around you, I wish I were. Tessa leaned back. I'm not a project. I'm not a challenge. I know. I'm not going to be impressed by your money. I'm not offering it. She met his gaze. Then what are you offering? Time, honesty, more cinnamon bread. She laughed again, softer this time. That's a start. They lingered after the plates were cleared, watching the sky burn orange through the window. When he dropped her off at her truck back at the market lot, she didn't get out right away. Next week, she said, I'm bringing marigolds. They're stubborn. They grow even in the worst soil. I'll be here. She hesitated. You always show up when you say you will, only when it matters. She nodded once, then climbed out and shut the door. He watched her drive off until the rusted truck disappeared around the corner. The scent of fried zucchini still clung to his clothes, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running from anything. He felt like he was running toward something. Wesley leaned against the railing of the rooftop terrace, staring across the skyline as the city glowed beneath the early evening haze. The sound of ice clinking into a glass behind him didn't break his focus, but the voice that followed did. You've been to the same flower stall 4 Saturdays in a row, Julian said, stepping beside him with 2 tumblers of whiskey. Either you're opening a greenhouse or you're in trouble. Wesley took the glass without looking. Neither. Julian took a sip. You missed the Zurich call this morning. I didn't forget. I rescheduled. You rescheduled a $20 million negotiation to buy zinnias. Wesley finally turned to face him. No. I rescheduled a negotiation so I wouldn't miss seeing a woman who reminds me I'm still human. Julian raised both brows. Well, that's new. She doesn't need anything from me. She's not impressed by who I am. And she's not afraid to tell me when I'm being an ass. So she's either a saint or a masochist. She's honest, Wesley said, which is more than I can say for half the people at our last board meeting. Julian studied him for a moment. If she's that important, why haven't you brought her here? Wesley looked out over the city again, because this world would crush her. The following Saturday brought wind and low clouds threatening rain. The market was quieter. A few stalls had packed up early, but Tessa's truck was still parked in its usual spot, the tailgate down. A canvas canopy stretched overhead to protect the buckets of blooms. You're late, she said as he approached, her hands inside a pair of gardening gloves. I thought the city chewed you up. I got cornered by investors. They think I've gone soft. Have you? He leaned forward until they were eye to eye. Only around you. Tessa motioned toward a folding chair beside her. Sit. I'm making seed bundles for a community garden in Oak Ridge. You've got big hands. You'll be good at this. He lowered himself into the chair and picked up a scoop. You do this every week. Only when the kids from the shelter come by. They're planting their own garden this summer. Wesley paused, watching her tie the paper bundles with twine. You don't talk about yourself much. There's not much to tell. I doubt that. She hesitated, hands stilling. I grew up here. My dad left when I was 7. My mom worked 2 jobs and still made time to teach me how to grow things. She passed away 4 years ago. Wesley said nothing. He didn't offer sympathy, just waited. I kept the house, Tessa continued, took over the garden, started selling flowers to help with the bills. You live there alone, with my dog. And sometimes the neighbor's cat when he forgets which porch is his. Wesley smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What about you? She asked. What's behind the suits and private drivers? He rolled a seed packet between his fingers. My father was a chemist, brilliant, quiet. He died before I graduated college. My mother remarried a man who thought emotions were liabilities. I built the company to prove I didn't need either of them. She looked at him for a long time. You're still proving it. Until a few weeks ago, I didn't think I had another option. Tessa leaned back and tossed him a bundle of lavender seeds. You do now. By late afternoon, the rain had started. Light at first, then steady, soaking the pavement and driving away the last of the foot traffic. Wesley helped her pull the buckets under the canopy and cover the table. You're soaked, she said, brushing water from his collar. So are you. Difference is, I dressed for this. I didn't know I'd be building seed bundles in a thunderstorm. Tessa laughed, a real one this time, and it caught him off guard. I want to show you something, she said suddenly. Now, follow me. She drove them out of town, the windshield wipers thumping in rhythm as the sky darkened. They turned off the highway and onto a narrow gravel road lined with trees. At the end of it sat a white farmhouse with peeling paint and a wraparound porch, its windows glowing faintly. This is it, she said, cutting the engine. He stepped out, the scent of wet soil and old wood wrapping around him. Tessa unlocked the front door and led him through a small foyer into the kitchen. The floor creaked beneath their feet. The walls were lined with photos, faded Polaroids of gardens, birthdays, a woman with the same eyes as Tessa holding a watering can. She taught me everything, Tessa said, fingering one of the frames. This is where I come when everything else feels too loud. He followed her to a back door that opened onto a wide yard, now slick with rain. Beyond the porch, rows of raised beds stretched into the distance. Marigolds, cosmos, sunflowers, even in the fading light, the colors were vivid. Wesley stood in silence, rain soaking his shirt as he looked out at the garden. I don't bring people here, she said. Why me? Because you didn't ask to see it, and because I wanted you to understand. He turned to her slowly. Understand what? That I'm not trying to keep you out. I'm just not willing to lose myself to let someone in. He stepped closer. I'm not here to take anything from you. Tessa searched his face. Then why are you here? Because this, he gestured to the house, the garden, the rain, this feels more real than anything I've built in 10 years. She didn't move. The rain fell harder, drumming against the porch roof, pooling around their feet. Then, without warning, she reached up and pressed her lips to his. It wasn't soft. It wasn't hesitant. It was honest. When she pulled away, her voice was barely above a whisper. You'll break this if you're not careful. I know, he said, breathless. But I'd rather risk breaking it than never hold it at all. Inside the house, the lights flickered once, then steadied. Neither of them noticed. Outside, the rain kept falling. But for the first time in years, Wesley didn't care if he got wet. The invitation arrived wrapped in navy linen paper, hand-delivered to Tessa's flower stall on a breezy Thursday morning. It was addressed in looping gold ink, sealed with a wax crest she didn't recognize until she peeled it away and saw the name at the top. Rainer Foundation Annual Gala benefiting urban green initiatives. She stared at it, fingers tightening on the envelope. The date was Saturday. 2 days from now, by the time Wesley called that evening, she already knew what she was going to say. I got your invitation, she said before he could speak. I hoped you would. I'm not going. There was a pause on the other end. You haven't even heard what it's about. I don't need to. I don't belong in that world. I didn't invite you into a world, Tessa. I invited you into a night. That's the same thing. No, it's not. She stood by her kitchen window, watching the porch light flicker against the growing dusk. I'm not a novelty, Wesley. I'm not going to be paraded around in front of people who see me as some charming deviation from their usual crowd. I would never let that happen. It's not about what you'd let happen, it's about what always happens. He was quiet for a moment. Then let me show you it doesn't have to. She didn't answer. Not then, But when she hung up, she didn't throw the invitation away either. Saturday came with clear skies and a breeze that carried the last scent of early spring. By noon, Tessa had packed up her stall and returned home, where a box waited on her porch. No note, just a small card that read, "If you say yes, wear this." Inside was a gown midnight blue, elegant and simple, with a neckline that made her hesitate and a silk lining softer than anything she'd ever touched. Tessa stared at it for a long time before finally walking to her closet. She arrived outside the Rainer Foundation ballroom promptly at 7, heart hammering as she stepped out of the car. The driver opened the door for her without a word. She didn't recognize the man, but she suspected Wesley had chosen someone who wouldn't ask questions. The building towered above her, glass and light reflecting off every surface. She paused at the entrance, bracing herself. Then she walked in. The room was cathedral high, filled with soft music and the clink of crystal. Waiters moved like choreography through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne and bite-sized things she couldn't name. The guests were clad in satin and silk, their laughter low and polished, their glances sharp. Tessa felt eyes on her the moment she entered. But then she saw him. Wesley stood across the room in a charcoal suit, darker than anything he usually wore, the top button undone, hair swept back. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was waiting. For her, when their eyes met, he moved through the crowd without hesitation. "I didn't think you'd come," he said when he reached her. "I almost didn't. I'm glad you did. I'm still not sure I belong here. You belong wherever you choose to stand." She looked around. "It's beautiful, intimidating. Like a dream I'm not entirely convinced is mine." "You're not here to be convinced. You're here to be honored," she frowned. "What do you mean?" He took her hand gently, guiding her toward the main stage at the far end of the ballroom. A man stood at the podium, finishing a short speech about conservation initiatives and city gardens. "And now," he said into the microphone, "we'd like to honor this year's Urban Green Grant recipient, the Oak Ridge Community Garden Project, founded and managed by Tessa Oakley." She froze. "What did you do?" she whispered. Wesley leaned close. "You built something that changes lives. I just made sure people saw it." "I didn't apply for anything. I know, I did it for you." The spotlight found her. Applause followed. "I can't accept this," she started, but he turned her gently to face the stage. "You already have." She stepped forward slowly, hands trembling slightly as she took the envelope offered to her. Inside was a grant enough to expand her garden threefold, install irrigation, and hire full-time help. She stood at the podium, looking over a sea of strangers. Then she glanced at Wesley, who stood just behind the curtain, watching with quiet pride. "I wasn't expecting to speak," she began, voice steady, "and I certainly wasn't expecting to be here. But I've spent most of my life growing things in silence. I didn't think anyone was watching. So, thank you for proving me wrong." When she stepped down, Wesley met her halfway. "You could have told me," she said. "You would have refused," she nodded. "You know me too well. I hope to know you better." Outside, the air had cooled. He walked her to the car himself, hand pressed lightly at her back. "What now?" she asked as the city lights flickered around them. "I was hoping," he said slowly, "to offer you something else." She turned to face him. "My company just acquired a plot of land near Oak Ridge. It's zoned for commercial use, but I'd rather see it bloom. If you want it, it's yours, no strings, just soil." She blinked. "You're giving me land. I'm giving you space to grow everything you've been trying to grow alone." She stared at him, heart full to the brim. "I've never." She started, then stopped. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me stay by your side while you figure it out." Tessa reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers cool against his skin. "I love you," she said. He stilled, then breathed. "Say it again." "I love you." He kissed her long, slow, and deep, as if everything they'd built had led here. When she pulled back, she smiled. "Still think I don't belong in your world?" "No," he said. "I think you built mine without even trying." Months later, the Oak Ridge garden doubled in size. Local kids painted murals along the fence, and volunteers came every weekend. A new section called the Rainer Beds bloomed with wildflowers, tulips, cosmos, and marigolds, each one grown from seeds bundled that rainy afternoon. Wesley never missed a Saturday, not once. And on a sunny morning in June, under a trellis of blooming honeysuckle, he dropped to one knee in her garden and asked her to marry him. She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered, tears in her eyes. They celebrated that night not in a ballroom, but under string lights in her backyard, surrounded by rows of blossoms and the scent of damp earth. Because in the end, the CEO who stopped by a farmer's market didn't just find flowers. He found home. Tessa adjusted the strap of her sandal as she stepped out of the greenhouse, the late morning sun casting a golden sheen across the gravel path. The scent of mint and lemon balm drifted from the nearby herb beds, and bees murmured lazily among the thyme blossoms. She tucked a pencil behind her ear and glanced over her clipboard, scanning the list of spring planting tasks she'd promised to review before the volunteers arrived. Footsteps behind her crunched softly over the gravel. "You're up early," Wesley said, his voice low and warm. She turned and found him holding two mugs, the steam curling from the tops. He wore worn jeans and a faded t-shirt that clung slightly to his shoulders, his hair still damp from his shower. "I told the interns I'd leave notes by noon. They're trying to run their own starter rows next week." He handed her a mug. "Hazelnut and oat milk, I guessed," she blew across the top. "You guessed right." They walked side by side toward the new plot near the fence where a few rows of soil had already been tilled. Tessa stopped beside a stake marker and crouched to check the depth of the trench. Wesley knelt beside her. "You ever slow down?" he asked. "I do," she said, brushing dirt from her fingers. "Just not when there's growing to be done." He reached into the seed bag and pulled out a handful of calendula. "You know, I got a call from the city council. They want to expand the grant into a long-term partnership, community gardens in 5 more boroughs." She blinked. "That's incredible. They want you to lead the initiative." Tessa stood, brushing dirt from her knees. "That's a lot, I know, but I also know you'd be perfect." She looked out over the rows of raised beds, her thoughts quiet. "I've never done anything on that scale." "You don't have to say yes now," he said. "But they'll wait, they want it done right." She turned to him. "You're the one who made them see it could be real." He shook his head. "You're the one who made it real." They spent the rest of the morning labeling seed trays and reorganizing the shed, their conversation drifting from garden logistics to the possibility of a greenhouse scholarship program for underfunded schools. By the time the volunteers arrived, Tessa had already written out a full plan on the back of an old invoice and stuck it to the clipboard with a clothespin. That evening, the garden glowed under the soft light of carefully strung bulbs. Long tables had been set up near the fence for the fundraiser dinner, covered in white linen and scattered with mismatched vases of fresh-cut wildflowers. Neighbors, local teachers, and a few familiar faces from the market filled the space with laughter and the clatter of shared dishes. Wesley stood near the trellis, watching Tessa move through the crowd. She wore a loose linen dress the color of honey and carried a pitcher of lemonade in one hand, stopping every few feet to greet someone or laugh at a joke. Julian appeared beside Wesley, holding a plate of pasta. "So this is your empire now." Wesley didn't look away from her. "Feels more like home." Julian took a sip of wine. "You look different. You're not checking your phone. You didn't once mention quarterly projections. You're wearing sneakers." "I haven't missed a single thing," Wesley said. "Not the phone, not the boardroom, not even the skyline." Julian followed his gaze to where Tessa was leaning down to talk to a little boy, showing her a painted rock. "She's good for you," Julian said. "She's it for me," Wesley replied. As twilight settled, Tessa stood and tapped a spoon against a glass. The voices quieted. "I won't keep you long," she said. "I just want to thank you all for being here. When I started this garden, it was just a way to keep something alive. I didn't know I was building a future. But someone came into my life and reminded me that growth doesn't stop when something blooms, it just changes direction." She looked to Wesley, her eyes catching the candlelight. "So thank you," she continued, "for believing in what this place could be. And thank you, Wesley, for seeing me when I didn't know I needed to be seen." As applause rose, Wesley crossed the space between them and took her hand. "I have something for you." She turned toward him as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. You already proposed, she whispered. This isn't a proposal. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a marigold, its petals carefully etched by hand. I had it made from the first flower you gave me, he said. The one you said grew in the worst soil. Tessa touched it, her fingers trembling slightly. You're the strongest thing I've ever known, he said, voice low. And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I never planned on loving you, good, he whispered, because plans were never my specialty. But loving you is. The guests returned to their meals, and the music started again, a soft jazz quartet playing near the hedge. Tessa and Wesley stepped into a slow dance, her arms around his neck, his hands warm at her waist. They didn't speak for several minutes. The garden moved around them, glasses clinking, laughter rising, lights swaying gently in the breeze, but within their small circle, everything else faded. Later that night, after every guest had gone and the dishes were stacked high in the farmhouse sink, Tessa and Wesley lay on the porch swing wrapped in a worn quilt. Crickets buzzed in the darkness and the stars blinked overhead. I said yes to the city council, she said quietly. He turned his head. While you were distracted by Julian's third helping of pie, he laughed softly. You're going to change everything? I already did, she said. I changed you, he pulled her closer. You made me better. She rested her head on his chest. You made me brave. The swing creaked gently as they rocked, the night folding around them like a lullaby. The garden thrived through every season that followed. The Oak Ridge expansion reached 6 new neighborhoods within 2 years. Tessa became the face of a growing movement, her hands still covered in soil, her heart still rooted in the backyard where it all began. Wesley never missed a single community dinner, nor a planting day, nor a single morning mug of hazelnut coffee. They married under the arbor in the garden, where marigolds bloomed in every direction. The vows were handwritten, the rings simple, the joy immeasurable, and every Saturday, without fail, Wesley still brought her flowers. Not because she needed them, but because he never wanted her to forget that she had once stopped a billionaire in his tracks with nothing but a bucket of wild blooms and a fearless heart.